ran it on QI a few years ago.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a fish.
There's no such thing as a fish.
No, seriously, it's in the Oxford Dictionary of Underwater Life. It says it right there, first paragraph, no such thing as a fish.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, no such thing as a fish!
Hello, and welcome to a very special edition of No Such Thing as a Fish, a weekly podcast this week coming to you from 4 undisclosed locations in the UK. My name is Dan Schreiber. I am sitting here with Anna Tuszynski.
Hi.
Andrew Hunter-Murray.
Hello.
And James Harkin. And once again, we have gathered around the microphones, but not with 4 facts this time. No, this time we are here with 35 facts for this very special comic relief show that we are going to be doing. 35 facts, each lasting 35 minutes each, presented by 35 different celebrity guests, all in aid of 35 years of comic relief.
That is right, and we don't have a shred of regret about the trial that we've committed ourselves to. We couldn't be more excited. We hope you guys are really excited, and really want to emphasize that hopefully we're going to have a good time along the way. Some laughs, maybe, some gags, but the point is this is about a really serious thing, which is that we want to raise as much money as humanly possible. Comic Relief is such an amazing, amazing charity. It's needed so much more this year even than it has been before. So COVID has destroyed lives here in the UK and around the world. Comic Relief donates money pretty much half and half, UK and globally, to try and lift people out of poverty, to try and provide them with the basic essentials needed for to lead a vaguely decent life. So even if you give a little bit, like £5 will give a toiletry pack to someone who's sleeping rough. If you can spend a little bit more, you could pay £50, for instance. That would help to pay for 2 weeks of intensive therapy for a young disabled person in Malawi. So whatever you give, it will be so, so useful and so desperately needed.
That's right. And there are lots and lots. I'm going to take this off. I will say,
voice is a bit weird.
These things are very, very comfortable and you should definitely buy them. But we'll get to that in a second. But there are loads and loads of ways that you can donate to Comic Relief. One way is to go to comicrelief.com/fish, and that will take you to our Just Giving page, where you can give as much or as little as you want. Just whatever you can afford will be amazing. But the other way is to go to comicrelief.com, and they have a shop there, and you can buy things like these amazing red noses, which have no plastic in them this year. For the
no plastic whatsoever. It's very exciting. Is it sugarcane derivatives? Either way, It's really, they're so they're very easy on the nose. They're lovely. And there are 9, I think, different species and varieties that you can get. And each one comes with a little box, and you can make a little house for it by turning the box inside out. It's really nice.
I was reading today about how much money YouTubers make by doing unboxing things.
Oh,
you know, where they buy a gift or something and then they open it up. So I have one of these here, a red nose thing, and I'm going to open it for the first time and let's see what I get. Oh my goodness. This could make me millions on YouTube. It's the same one as the other one. But there are 9 different ones that you can get. Andy, you're rocking one of the T-shirts that you can buy?
Yes, you can get. Hang on, I'll just raise myself into
We should say very quickly, getting messages that we're lagging at the moment with the video. Don't worry, everyone. We will fix it. We will get it better. So we are moving robotic. Apparently our audio is all very good. But someone saying, oh my God, I can finally put faces to the voices. Yes. Welcome to our faces, everyone. Welcome to the faces of No Such Thing as a Fish.
What you don't know is that in real life, we do lag. So if you ever see us in the street, we're always a few seconds behind our voices.
Yeah, we're very jerky. I think that's why people call us jerks a lot. No one's used that word since the 90s, and I know it.
What are you rocking on your head there?
Oh, this little guy, you talking to me?
Yes.
Sexy hairband, also available at the Comic Relief website. Love them. I'd forgotten how flattering a good hairband is. Haven't worn them since I was a kid.
If you only have £1 to spend, you can buy a little kind of pin badge.
Very nice.
Oh, so cute. But yeah, if you want to donate, then the best thing really to do is to go to comicrelief.com/fish, and you'll get to our Just Giving page, and you'll get us closer to our target, which we don't know what it is, but we're going to try and get as high as we possibly can. What is it going to be, £100 billion? Daniel?
That's right.
That's about right, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the idea, is that my personal ambition, I'm thinking $1 million minimum. But we have set the target a bit lower at 35,000. I do want us to smash that. I want us to absolutely smash that. So if you are watching right now and you can help us out, we would really appreciate that. We are going to sort out this lagging, so don't worry, everyone. And maybe very quickly, we can give you a rundown of all the interesting guests that we've got coming on to the show, because, I mean, wowee, this is going to be an amazing 20 hours. So, you're going to see later on in the show, we're going to see Stephen Fry and Sandy Toksvig and Dr. Maggie Adderin-Pocock. You're going to see Mary Roach, who's over in the States, Tim Minchin, who's down in Australia, Neil Gaiman, who's in New Zealand. We're going to be UK guests like Armando Annucci. We've got Sally Phillips and Ronnie Ancona coming on together. My Dad Wrote a Porno. All three members are going to be here for the first time in a sort of a smash of the porno fish brigade. I don't know how to. And so what we'll do is we're going to take a very quick break to get ready, and we'll be back with Michael Palin in just a few minutes. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome finally to the opening fact of No Such Thing as a Fish, the comic relief special. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for giving us money if you already had. We've got 20 hours ahead of us, and we have the most exciting first guest to kick it off. Ladies and gentlemen, giving us fact number 1 of 35, it is the almighty Sir Michael Palin.
I can't. The introduction was too much. Got to have a glass of water. My fact is, in the 1920s and 30s, there were many desperate attempts to climb Everest. Few more bizarre than Maurice Wilson, whose idea was to fly a plane from Purley to Tibet, crash land it halfway up Everest, and walk the rest of the way to the top.
Wow. Beautiful.
What a guy.
What an idea.
And did he make it?
No, I checked the story again, and I found out that, Maurice Wilson was one of these terrific sort of gung-ho, jolly aviators who was also aviator, mountaineer, and mystic. I always think when you see mystic there, that means basically loony. And he took off from Purley, and I think it was a gypsy moth plane. It had a limited range of about 600 miles, so he had to keep stopping almost every large town on the way to Tibet. And he'd totally run out of fuel by the time he got to India, so he parked it somewhere in northern India and, disguised as a Buddhist priest, a Buddhist monk, he entered Tibet with 1 pony and 3 guides and tried to climb Everest from that point on.
To be fair to him, to have got from Purley all the way to Tibet as someone who'd basically just taught himself to fly and then bought a second-hand beaten-up old plane, I think that's pretty impressive. I'd give him a silver medal.
Yeah.
I think so too. I mean, it's you've got to be fairly, what's the word? You've got to be fairly mystical to believe that sort of thing is going to work. And I think he just had a total self-belief, as did a lot of explorers at that time. There was a wonderful man called Younghusband, who Sir Francis Younghusband, who they operated on that area of the Himalaya, I think called the Great Game, which was between sort of Russia and the British Empire. And they had spies out, making sure that the Russians didn't come south, and the Russians had spies out, making sure that they didn't go north. And Sir Francis Younghusband was sort of fellow of the Royal Geographical Society, also a bit of a mystic, believed in free sex and eugenics, and he invaded Tibet on his own without asking the British government. In 1904, he went over the mountains and invaded Tibet, and he was severely ticked off when they found out what he'd done without asking. So there you go.
Wow. I think I've noticed, Michael, that, you are an adventurer. You've been to so many places. I've never found a book that is called How to Be an Explorer. And my theory behind that is that all the things that all the great explorers did you can't put them in a book to recommend because they were so wacky and their methods were so bizarre that if you probably used them, you would die in the process. And it's, there was a great explorer called Sebastian Snow. I don't know if you've ever experienced him.
but he used to travel the Amazon. He was the first person to walk all of it, and he never learned the local language. He never carried any weapons on him because he was so accident prone. His friends thought he might accidentally shoot himself if he did. So he got by drinking puddle water. He never brought any water. Somehow this guy survived, and his motto was "bash on regardless."
Oh, well, that is quite eloquent for an explorer, because a lot of them just barely said anything. They just kept going. I mean, Colonel Fawcett is the great one for the Amazon. You'll know about him. He believed that the lost kingdom of El Dorado was in the middle of the Amazon jungle, and he just thought he'd go to the Amazon jungle and ask, excuse me, see El Dorado? Yes, over there, mate, over there. And eventually, I think it was said that he disappeared. He was lost, believed eaten somewhere in the middle of the Amazon jungle. But I think that's most unfair to the tribes, because I don't think they would have eaten Fawcett. It didn't sound terribly tasty.
He could have been eaten by an animal, I guess. But I just think lost, presumed eaten is a hell of a way to go.
Yeah. Of course, nowadays, I suppose you'd know what had happened to him, wouldn't you? He'd be on, have a little sort of chip on him and all that, and you'd know exactly where he was. That's the great thing about it. Yes, he would have. Yes, just about to be eaten. Yeah.
Legs gone.
What sort of sauce should I have it with?
But that's the thing with Maurice Wilson, is we're not sure whether he got to the top or not, are we? Because there was a man called Thomas Noy who apparently found a tent that he thinks might have belonged to him, and it was very, very high up Everest, and he thinks if it was his, then it could be the highest that ever anyone's got up there. So,
that's interesting, because the this was I think it was in the 1930s, wasn't it? It was after Mallory and Irvine had made their third attempt to climb Everest in 1924, and they were seen on the last stage disappearing into the clouds within 1,000 feet of the top of Everest or less, and were never seen again. So that's an extraordinary story, because no one really knows to this day whether they actually got there or not. And Mallory's body was found about 3 years ago, something like that.
You know the story, Michael, about with Mallory, there was a suggestion that when he got to the top of Everest, he was going to leave a photo of his wife. So he took a photo of his wife in his wallet, and as soon as he got up there, that was going to be part of his ritual to say, I did it, leave it there, I brought you with me. So we obviously don't know if he made it or not, but when they found his body, and there's an amazing bit of footage that you can see where it's extraordinary, and they find all his things and his name, Mallory, there it is on his tag. He's fully preserved in the snow. But
did he have a name tag?
Yeah, it was on his underpants, wasn't it? He always had his name in there.
Well, he was a public schoolboy, He always had labels on everything.
When they went through his wallet, they found his wallet. They didn't find the camera, but one thing they didn't find in the wallet was the photo of his wife.
Wow. Now, the interesting thing, of course, is that Andrew Irvine, who climbed with him, was one of the two who went up. Irvine had an affair with Mallory's wife.
Really?
Did you know that?
No.
Yeah,
so maybe he stole the photo from the wallet.
Yes.
Because he fancied the wife so much, and then everyone thinks that Mallory made it.
Yeah, well, there you are. You see, these things. It all came down to sex. That's all I know.
Well, indeed, with Maurice Wilson, there seemed to be some sex involved. Apparently, the only person who had any faith in him was this woman, Enid, I think, the sort of love of his life, who was over in the UK. And Maurice wrote these diaries and these letters to her. And it's the kind of thing I always find amazing, like Scott in the Antarctic. How do they write letters? So Wilson was sort of up in this tent at base 3, I think, freezing. He's about to die. And he still has the wherewithal to get his pen out. And I think the last entry he wrote was when he was writing to Enid. He'd left the two Sherpa companions, Tuwang and Rinting, who've been very loyal to him because they didn't really believe, he was mad. He'd never climbed before. They were having to tell him how to use
exactly. I don't think he'd ever flown before. He was one of those people who try beginner's luck, man. Yeah.
Yeah, and it got him a long way. And his very last entry in his diary was ended with the words, "Off again, gorgeous day."
Oh,
just nice.
And that's very British, isn't it? The weather. Well, climbing Everest, bit drizzly.
He was amazing. I read. Sorry.
Yeah. No, go on. No.
Well, I was reading a bit more about his journey there, I think once he got there, he was interviewed by the Daily Express. He was interviewed when he was in India, and he said, by the way, I'm just off to climb Everest. And but the British authorities have banned him. So hence the disguise that you mentioned, Michael. But he had to hide all his climbing equipment in bags of wheat.
Really
he and his
great.
guides were just carrying, just some guys carrying some bags of wheat, full of all the crampons and everything you needed. Yeah,
That's wonderful. I mean, disguise was a big thing up there at that time. I mean, these sort of people who helped young husband and the British Army were working up there, and they were called pundits, and they were very, very bright young Indians who understood about maps and tracks and knew the paths absolutely perfectly. And they were sort of sent into Russian territory in disguise. They're all disguised. I think mainly monks and things like that, but wood choppers and sort of probably some of them in drag. I don't know. It was very much a place where at that time you could go off and do strange and weird and wonderful things, and you were so far away from the centre of command that you could very often get away with it. So I presume that was something in Maurice Wilson's makeup. He just felt that he could go off and do these things and be the first to get to the top of Everest by the most ridiculous means.
Yes, yeah.
Is there any link between the pundits that you just mentioned, Michael, and pundits, as in sports pundits?
That's where we get the
as
name.
in, No.
Yeah.
So did those pundits stand at the side passing comments and saying, he's really
it's a
fumbled
mountain
that
of
hold?
two halves.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I think they were supposed to. They knew the answer to so much. They helped these explorers. So it was considered they were experts. No one quite understood why, but they were experts. So I think it's the expert bit, if you can call cricket pundits experts. But it's interesting how the word, it's one of those words like bungalow that came out of India and all that around that time.
Speaking of words, I was reading about the first European woman, I should say, to climb up Everest. And this was a woman called Rutkiewicz. She was from Wanda Rutkiewicz. She was from Poland. And she was from a family who were actually from a Lithuanian town called Plunge.
Yeah, not good on your CV.
For a mountaineer, is it?
Yes. Yeah.
But she actually got to the top of Everest on the same day as John Paul II became the Pope. So a day for Poland.
Sorry, comma became the Pope. Yeah.
But it was an amazing day for Poland, and those two people met up later, and the Pope said, "The good Lord wanted us to rise so high on the same day," and he thought that,
yeah. You've heard about the Pope doing all that, but I never heard that story about her. She obviously it's a woman again. It's a woman thing. She wasn't given the opportunity. But I think that what's interesting about Everest was that people didn't really start to try and climb Everest until after the First World War. Mallory and Irvine were thought to be motivated by the fact that they'd lost so many of the young men, people of their age in the war, and yet they were still alive. So it was a kind of guilt thing. We've got to do something to show that there can be better times for the country. But one other thing which I've found in my travels is that you would think, well, the Sherpas, people who lived in Nepal, would have nipped up there in the 14th century or whatever, they've been up there. But actually the people who live in the area very rarely want to climb the mountains. I remember talking to a Masai who were looking out over Kilimanjaro, and I said, you must go up there all the time. You must just be able to just nip up and nip down. And say, go up there, you must be mad. I said, why? Well, he said it's cold. It's very miserable. Why would we want to go up there? There's nothing growing up there. They're absolutely right.
Yeah.
That's the thing. But you never go to the tourist sites of the place you live in. I've never been to Madame Tussauds.
No, we're talking about climbing Madame Tussauds.
Actually, Madame Tussauds is just stuffed with Masai warriors. Single Brit.
I read such an odd thing that I never knew. So when Hillary finally did manage to do it and came down, the first person that he saw, and our first sort of words from the conqueror of Everest, along with Tenzing, was, well, George, we knocked the bastard off. And that was a sentence delivered to a guy called George Lowe, who is his climbing partner, also a New Zealander, the only other New Zealander on there. And so I knew that story, and I knew that the sentence was directed at George. What I didn't know was that there was a keepsake from the top of Everest that that Hillary brought down to give to George Low, which was a fragment of marine limestone. Collected limestone at the top of Everest.
Yeah.
Really?
That is an amazing, the most Himalayas. I think I saw a southern African plate collided with a Eurasian plate, and the mountains where they hit, the mountains were sort of forced up. And yes, Everest, top of Everest, was on the seabed. So there are fossils of seashells on the very top of Everest, and the peak of Everest is made of limestone from thrust 5 miles up into the air.
I always find it amazing that they manage on these expeditions to remember to collect the, geological rocks, basically, that they've been told to when you're, again, about facing life and death situations. Barry told me to get this pebble. I'd rather go for that.
But you see, that would be nowadays, so many people go up there, that Everest would be several yards shorter. People taking a bit back. Oh, I've done a bit. No, I'm going to send a bit.
Michael, you've walked around the Himalayas, haven't you? Extensively, right? Was it dangerous, or was it,
we didn't get into great danger because we had to produce a television series. So, the next day you had to be back at work to do something else. But I mean, it was pretty tough up the Everest section. I mean, we went to about 17,000 feet, and we could walk there with a yak train. Didn't have to have sort of oxygen or anything like that. But it was bitterly cold, and we were at the best time of year. And I can see, just as you got further and further up, how dangerous it would be. And also you had to go with people who knew exactly where you should put your foot next. It was literally like that. Just take one step to the side, and you'll be sort of down, or you'll break your ankle or something like that. So, you had to be very careful, but I never felt it was utterly dangerous. But I could see, for those who went to the very, very top, were risking their lives, yes.
Yeah. Wow. I went to, sorry, go on, Anne.
I was just going to say that you mentioned that it will be shorter now, Everest, but actually it's taller, turns out.
Why is that?
Well, I think it was a big dispute, wasn't it, between China and Nepal over how tall it was. And they thought that it might have got taller because of the earthquake in 2015, which, again, as you said, shifted some tectonic plates around and also maybe related to global warming, thinning snow caps and stuff. So they thought, let's measure it again. China and Nepal having this big diplomatic argument anyway over how tall it was. So it was quite a nice diplomatic story. 2019, I think, Nepalese people went up. 2020, Chinese people did. And then they made a joint statement saying it's now 8,848.86 meters. So it's gained a little bit.
Nice.
Yeah. I suppose it's easy now. Is it easy now to tell how tall a mountain is? I mean, you can do it do it on Google probably or something like that. You don't actually have to go up there with a tape measure.
Well, there's that great story, and I don't know if we've ever verified it, and I'd love, so if someone watching this knows the answer to this, please let us know. There is the story that when it was originally measured, the mathematician who measured it at 29,000 feet exactly. And he was so worried that no one would believe him because it was such a round number that he added 2 feet, 29,002 feet, just out of fear that no one would believe his calculation.
Well, that's very good. A blow against precision. I like that. But I mean, it's another interesting fact I found about Everest was that Sir George Everest, it's named after Sir George Everest, the geographer, and he pronounced his name Everest. And apparently he was very irritated when people say, "Oh, we've been up your mountain, George." They called it after you, so Mount Everest. Everest, old chap, please, Everest. I mean, it just doesn't sound anything like a mountain, does it? Everest. Sounds like it's a massage parlour in southern India.
I don't think he ever saw the mountain even. I mean, he definitely didn't climb it. We know that, obviously. But he went to the foothills of the Himalayas because he was he spent 25 years doing the Great Trigonometrical Survey of India. That was the huge, abiding passion of his life. He was the Surveyor General. But I think in later life he was slightly embarrassed that this had been named after him because it wasn't really very much to do with him.
Yes, well, I mean, I prefer. I think it's the local name is Chomolungma. I think that's what it is, the Tibetan name, which sounds much better somehow.
It really does.
But then it's this naming thing. A lot of the mountains were sort of, well, actually, I'm not sure about the Himalayas, but certainly when I was writing a book about Antarctica, the expedition that went there in 1842, because they had to name all these various places that no one had seen before, capes, bays, mountains, and he just went through his sort of his address book and named them after people he knew and people he owed a favour to and all that. So it's interesting how naming works.
It's a good reason to befriend an explorer. You know, get some adventurers in your phone book. You might have a mountain named after you.
What would you most like to have named after you, do you think?
Oh
gosh.
Good question, isn't it? All the good stuff's sort of been done now, hasn't it?
I think a swimming pool in Bolton, maybe. Just like
a swimming pool in Bolton, yes.
I must say, I actually went to Nepal, and I kind of thought I might go to the bottom of Everest, but I just didn't have the energy or the time or the inclination or anything. But they drove me up, and they let me take a photo of it, which was really cool. But one thing I thought about being in Kathmandu, which I don't know if you remember this, Michael, which is that there's lots of kind of street children around there, a lot of working children. And actually, this is something that Comic Relief has helped with quite a lot over the last few years. And since 2003, they've given more than £10 million to help children in Nepal. And I got to say, one thing that I found really funny is I was on the street and this kid came up to me and he said, where are you from? Where are you from? And I said, I'm from London. And he said, I said, I'm from England. He said, England, capital city, London, population 67 million. Really? I was like, wow, that's amazing. I said, do you know all of those? And he said, yes, I know every capital in the world. And I said, well, I know every capital in the world as well. And so we had a big capital city off in the middle of the street in Kathmandu. And I said, okay, what's the capital of Canada? And he told me. And then he asked me, what's the capital of France? And so I thought, I'll give him a slightly more difficult one. What's the capital of Belgium? And then he came back to me like, what's the capital of Madagascar or something? He started asking me all the really difficult ones. And then I just thought, I'm going to have to get out of here. So gave him some candy and got out.
FYI, that's the rest of this show, everyone.
Get him on. Well, I once was in Ethiopia and I met a child in the street and I was going on about my love of football, and I'm from a city that play football and all that. Do you know football? Do you play football? He said, yes. Well, what's your team? And I said, well, all right, it's Sheffield United. And he said, oh, yeah, they lost on Saturday. Put me in my place.
But to be fair, that could have been any Saturday.
Don't be nasty.
Oh, calm down, guys.
Yeah, I shall go and get one of my books. Is that you? There's one...
Sorry, you go, Michael.
No, I was just going to say one very quick Comic Relief story that I had. But again, in Ethiopia, we went down the south and we got to a small village and... Comic Relief had put some money into digging a well, enabling the people in the village to dig the well. And it made a huge difference to village life because the women had to go for 4 miles to the nearest place to get water and bring it back on their heads and all that. And it was always the women who went. So it caused terrible ructions because the men were really fed up because the women were always at home now, because the well was working there. All you had to do was press a pump. Thanks to Comic Relief, these poor men, lives were made a misery.
Well, don't let that stop you giving any money to Comic Relief, by the way.
No. And by the way, if anyone's watching this, you can donate via our Just Giving page. That's the whole point of this thing today, is we want to raise as much money as possible. Hence getting the wonderful experience of getting to have Michael Palin chat facts with us here. comicrelief.com/fish. If you could go there, we would love to raise a huge amount. We're going to have to wrap up now. Michael, I know I hate that I'm wrapping this up. I hate that we're going to say goodbye to you, but thank you so much for being here with us. This has been a dream of ours for a very long time to have on the podcast. So,
a pleasure to do.
Thank you so much.
Lovely to talk with you all, and such a good cause. Give, please, to Comic Relief.
All right. We'll see you all in a second. We'll be back with our next guest, Sandy Topsford. We'll be back in about 2 minutes. Goodbye.
Hey everybody, we hope you enjoyed watching that video from our 20-hour-long No Such Thing as a Fish comic relief marathon. There are plenty more videos to watch, but before you watch them, we're going to ask you to donate to the cause that we did this for. Go to the link below and you will be sent to comicrelief.com/fish where you can donate and help change lives. Donate now.